Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Village of Bartlett Board meeting for October 3rd, 2023. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Daney?
Yes, here.
Gansey? Here. Genstein?
Here.
Hopkins?
Here.
Laporte?
Here.
Swansky? Here. President Wallace?
Here. So, please rise for our invocation this evening. In lieu of the pastor being here, you get yours truly. So, let's bow for a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for this village, for our police department and our firemen keeping us safe. We pray for their safety every day, Lord. I just pray thanks for these people that are standing up here willing to serve, and so many of them serve on more than just this board, Lord, and be with them and be with their families as they move forward. Give us wisdom this evening to make good decisions for the benefit of all residents in the village. Just ask you to bless the board members' families and all staff. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brings us to our consent agenda this evening. All items listed with an asterisk will be enacted in one motion. There'll be no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. That being said, would anybody like to add or remove anything from the consent?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to add item F1 under Public Works.
Does anybody have any discussion around the union agreement? I think we've all got that down. Are there any issues with that? Nope. All right. Anything else? There isn't anything else. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to amend the consent agenda this evening, which will include the board and committee minutes from September 19, 2023, the bills list from October 3, 2023. The consent this evening will also include items D1. The consent this evening will be adding item F1, and will be including items F2 and F3.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Trustee Daney, seconded by Trustee Hopkins. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Gunstein?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Laporte?
Yes.
Swansky? Yes. Daney?
Yes.
Gansey? Yes.
The motion carries. Now entertain a motion to approve the amended consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Trustee Daney, seconded by Trustee Hopkins. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Hopkins?
Yes.
Laporte?
Yes.
Swansky? Yes. Daney?
Yes.
Gansey? Yes. Genstein?
Yes.
The motion carries. Moving down to the President's report this evening, we have a few proclamations. I'll be reading two of them. I've asked Trustee Gansey to read the Arts DuPage proclamation, so okay. I'm only going to steal Ray's glasses for a little bit longer because you're probably not able to read anything.
Wait.
All right. Whenever we have somebody that served on some of the committees that we have around here for a long time, we just certainly like to recognize them. And this is the gentleman that's been on there for some time, and we thank him for his service. A proclamation recognizing Michael Poremba for his service of the Bartlett Police Pension Fund Board of Trustees. Whereas Bartlett Police Pension Fund Board of Trustees oversees the administration of the Police Pension Fund that benefits Bartlett police officers and their beneficiaries upon the conclusion of their service to the community. And whereas Mike Poremba is a longtime Bartlett resident who holds a degree in accounting from DePaul University and has professional experience in financial field working first for Kemper Insurance and currently as a vice president for Zurich North America. And whereas Mike's tenure on the pension board coincided with a period of great turnover and transition for the police department, and he generously shared his time, his insight, and his input to help direct the fund's investments and distributions for the welfare and well-being for our police officers. And whereas Mike's demonstrated commitment to serving our community calls forth our great pride in calling him a Bartlett resident and one of our tremendous civic volunteers. Now, therefore, I, Kevin Wallace, President of the Village of Bartlett, Cook, DuPage, and King Counties, extend our deep appreciation to Mike Poremba for his distinguished service on the Police Pension Fund Board and offer him our continued best wishes dated this third day of October, 2023. all yours.
All right, a proclamation for the Arts DuPage. Whereas Arts DuPage has regularly issued official proclamations to all the cities and villages in DuPage County on an annual basis, designating October as Arts DuPage Month. And whereas the arts embody much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind. And whereas the arts enrich us as individuals and play a unique role in the lives of our families and our communities. And whereas the arts promote a better understanding of the diversified cultures within our communities and unify us regardless of age, race, and ethnicity. And whereas the arts sector in DuPage County consists of 2,272 arts-related businesses and accounts for 4.2% of the total number of businesses in the region, a larger share of the economy than transportation, tourism, agriculture, and construction. And whereas the arts provide full-time employment for over 15,000 workers in DuPage County, and whereas the arts improve our economy, enrich our civic life, drive tourism and commerce, and exert a profound positive influence on the education of our children, and whereas the arts helped lead us through the darkest times by lifting our spirits, unifying communities, and providing entertainment. The arts also play a vital role in enlivening our communities, driving the economy, and elevating the appeal of our county. Now, therefore, be it resolved on behalf of Kevin Wallace, our village president, do hereby proclaim October 2023 as Arts DuPage Month in the village of Bartlett and call upon our community members to celebrate and promote the arts in DuPage County, dated this 3rd day of October 2023.
One more proclamation, and then I'm going to turn it over to Pam, right?
Oh, good.
And we just mentioned, actually, our wonderful museum and that Pam is 100% responsible for. I had some family come in town a few months back, and they were walking through there and like, oh my goodness, this is a lot of history and a really cool presentation. So, celebrating the 150th anniversary of Bartlett Depot. Imagine being here 150 years ago at that old depot sitting there. That was it. Wow. Hopkins were probably here on a horse or something. Whereas the village of Bartlett, as we know it today, might never have come to pass had it not been for the fortuitous intersection of the Chicago and Pacific Railway and the 40 acres of land and $300 that Luther and Sophia Bartlett donated for the village's historic train depot, Bartlett's first non-residential building. Whereas built in 1873, the depot had long been the centerpiece of Bartlett's downtown, the hub around which the village itself and all its ensuing commerce were built. And whereas in addition to its traditional use as a passenger ticket office and baggage room, at one time the clapboard structure also housed Bartlett's first telegraph and post office and was the point for shipping and receiving of all freight traveling through the community, including autos, farm implements, livestock, even the annual 4th of July fireworks. And whereas years before Metra, the Milwaukee Road's steam-powered trains pulled into and out of the station offered reliable service to area commuters, transforming Bartlett into a burgeoning community, or bedroom community, and provided the greater Bartlett area with a gateway to San Francisco, Los Angeles, Portland, and other cities across the country. And whereas this depot, which is the only original depot left on the Milwaukee West Metro line, and is the 3rd oldest station in the Chicagoland area, stood in active service for area residents for 134 years before it was carefully restored for its new community role as a Bartlett Depot Museum. And whereas since the Depot Museum's dedication and ribbon cutting on September 12, 2010, this proud historic train station has been sharing Bartlett's railroad stories through permanent and changing exhibitions available to our community and the generations that will follow. Thanks to Pam once again. Now, therefore, I, Kevin Wallace, President of the Village of Bartlett, Cook, DuPage, and Kane Counties, do hereby call upon everyone to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Bartlett Depot and join the village at the birthday bash on Saturday, October 7th. May this tiny building in the heart of our downtown continue to serve as a special place for people to come together, commemorate our village's rich history. Dated this 3rd day of October 2023.
See if this works. Is what I'm pushing?
Well, first of all, thank you, President Wallace, for that nice introduction. With my talk today, I'm just going to expound on some of the points that were made briefly in the proclamation. And we must have been on the same page when you started, because I said 150 years is just a minuscule speck in world history. But for Bartlett, it's our entire history. Imagine yourself standing at Oak and Railroad Avenue 150 years ago, and maybe the Hopkins, maybe you were there. There would have been nothing except the trees on Luther and Sophia Bartlett's Cook County woodlot. The rest of their 600-plus acres of land and homestead laid in DuPage County, where they were farmers. The Chicago and Pacific Railroad had approached the couple the year prior, seeking to build a rail line from Chicago to Elgin, touted to be 7 miles shorter. The railroad was seeking donations of land along the route that they wanted to build. The Bartletts realized the advantage of this new form of technology, especially in the movement of farming goods to market. And they said yes for the benefit of themselves, but also their farming neighbors. I wonder what it must have been like to watch the construction of the railroads through that woodlot and the building of our little depot. Not all communities can point to the exact spot where their roots began, but in Bartlett we can. It was our depot. Economic growth. If you build it, they will come, and they did. The January 1st, 1876 Elgin Advocate reported, and this is like my most favorite report of early Bartlett history, and I quote, 2 years and a half ago, there was no such town as Bartlett. But with the advent of the iron horse, it became necessary to have a station. And when a station was decided upon, the town followed as matter of course. And today we see a thriving village which has sprung up, if by magic, but with all the evidence of being substantial and prosperous. Because for the previous November, and that would have been 1875, freight receipts amounted to $414.50, passenger tickets $177, and milk receipts $305. Contracts have been let now for 7 new houses. I heard the numbers you were talking about earlier, 7 new houses. And the steam mill of Carr and Lobdell was running day and night to fulfill the demand. Its 2 run of stone ground about 1,000 bushels every 24 hours. And this is how they concluded the write-up. Bartlett will grow in importance, and with a great start already obtained, it is destined to become a thriving suburb of Elgin.
Elgin.
The hub of activity. The depot was once the hub of activity in the village with the station agent in charge. Our first agent was the Bartlett son-in-law, Oliver C. Hutchins. We always say that's probably how he got the job. He was very well liked, too. His duties included the handling all aspects of the railroad freight traffic. And he also sold tickets to those going to Elgin to shop or to transfer onto long-distance passenger trains or heading to Chicago to attend the theater. You know, sending and receiving of telegrams was the text message of the time back then, and it was basically used by the railroad and sometimes by citizens to get a message quickly. How did people in the community know back then that our depot had a telegraph office? If you look at the lower right slide, you see Bartlett, and afterward is the dot, and that's the sign we replicated today for the museum. You would have known back then that dot meant that there was a telegraph station in between. The depot was our village's first post office, and Luther Bartlett was our first postmaster. Railroad mail brought in by sacks were dropped on the mailbag hook, and that's the top picture where you see the oval. The station agent would go out and take the mail off the hook, and also would put our mail hanging on the hook to go to faraway places. Okay, next one. Well, I'll just keep reading while we get back to transportation to and fro. So we need to go back. There we go. Residents have rode the train for many reasons throughout our history. Let's meet just a few. We have Irene Kelly, who's in the bottom left there. She is standing with her classroom at Bartlett School. She lived in Chicago. She rode the train out on Sunday evenings, and then she stayed for the week, and then rode the train back on Friday night. You know, she eventually did marry a Bartlett resident, and the impact that she had on our community was manyfold. She was a charter member of the Bartlett Women's Club, started that organization. She was the only woman on the board of the Council of Defense during World War II, and she, along with other women, laid the foundation for the formation of St. Peter Damian Catholic Church. The picture over to the right is Earl Humbrock. He's standing on the platform in World War II. Beginning in World War I and wars that have followed, the depot has taken our servicemen overseas, to training camps, to fighting grounds, and have also brought them home. The young boy standing there, Fred Beneke, you know, he came over here in Bartlett in 1923. He and his mother, an aunt, and an infant traveled from Bremen, Germany, aboard the Seidelts, and they traveled across the Atlantic Ocean. They spent the night at Ellis Island, and without speaking any English, the next day they get on a train in New York, and they head to Bartlett, where Fred's dad is waiting for them at the depot. So bringing immigrants into a new life in this community. Fred goes on to become a business owner. He played on the Bartlett Cubs. He was also a Bartlett volunteer fireman for 23 years. But the depot also whisked people away, and the two gals that you see on the side are Anna and Effie Baxman, who went west to become Harvey Girls. Now, maybe some of you don't know what a Harvey Girl is, but they were the hostesses and waitresses at lush train stations out in the west, out in New Mexico and Arizona. So the next slide is changing times. As manufacturing businesses like the Huntley Dairy and the lumber yard ceased operations and delivery truck and commuter traffic increased post-World War II, the role of the depot changed. Bartlett had evolved from a village surrounding farms, reliant on the rails, to a Chicago bedroom community. The obsolete baggage room became the one-time office of a Northwest Suburban Mass Transit District. And the platform would overflow every day with the amount of now commuters riding into Chicago to do their job. And the grassy area around the depot turned into parking spaces. Okay, next slide, please. And then at that point, in 2007, the doors to the depot closed on December 10th. And the following morning, Bartlett's new metro station opened up to the east. But as we all know, the depot's story and prominence did not end that day. In 2009, extensive restoration began on the building, preparing it for its new role. Who remembers when the depot was lifted up and moved back about 100 feet to the west? That was really kind of funny when you're driving through town and all of a sudden you saw it in a new spot there for a couple months, while we built a proper foundation under it. Some exciting things happened during that time. We found what we believe was the original ticket window behind some 1970s paneling, and also one of the buttresses in the back. We found a beautiful scripted bee painted on the back. It's been since put back up and hidden, but it served as the inspiration for the depot's logo. Okay, next slide. On September 12, 2010, the depot once again opened to all as the Bartlett Depot Museum, operated by the Village of Bartlett. The free museum tells the stories of our rail history through the changing exhibits and programming for all ages. And the last slide. Today, Standard Railroad and Oka Avenues, and what do you see a century and a half later? A village that incorporated in 1891, experienced the advent of schools, worship facilities, automobiles, electric lights, the telephone, running water, a sewer system, civic groups and organizations, man landing on the moon, and we all know we played an important role in that accomplishment. Fire, library, and park districts, the computer, the internet, a business park, and growth to 41,000 plus residents. I think Luther and Sophia Bartlett would be impressed and amazed with their vision of a railroad and a birth of a community which they named Bartlett. So, happy 150th, Bartlett, and to our depot, and join us on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. We have on our agenda this evening for the board meeting is questions. Anybody have questions for staff?
I have just a couple of birthdays that I'd like to recognize. We have Nick Tellerico. That's what I said, didn't I? He's our village civil engineer, and he's going to be replacing Bob Allen. His birthday is on the 11th. And also, I have to recognize one of our public works employees, and if I didn't do this, I wouldn't be able to stay at the house. This is Tyler Reese. He's my granddaughter's husband, and his birthday is the 30th of this month. So congratulations, guys. Happy birthday. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Trustee Daney. Anybody else?
I just had a quick question for Dan Dinges. Is there an update on Prospect Avenue's construction? I was just recently over there, and it's kind of a mess, and I know I've got a few people that have asked me about it.
I didn't make it out there. I was out there earlier. They were supposed to make it down the hill, and then from there they head east. The plan is to get off of Prospect. There is, we had a conflict. There's there's actually 3 culvert pipes that cross Prospect that we have to go under. So they have to get some couplers and stuff like that to rebuild the storm sewer. So they won't be able to complete that section for probably a couple of weeks, but the plan is they'll be heading on the hill. Once we get that other section on Prospect done, then we'll get it temporary patched and be done for that stretch for now. So hopefully they should be within the next day or so off of Prospect, except for that one piece where they're going to have to come back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, if you could ask them to put a little bit more signage out there, because it's pretty tight, and it's, unsafe. And
Yeah, they've been doing the one-lane direction, basically have flaggers.
I went down it the other day, and the sign said there was a flagger, and there wasn't.
Okay.
And so, luckily the person on the other side stopped, because there was only room for one person.
Gravel, it's still two-way, but there's just a lane of gravel.
They're definitely not putting enough into their safety efforts on that street.
We'll talk to them tomorrow. Yep.
And is 59 and West Bartlett Road still on pace to be cleaned up at some point for the winter?
What we heard from IDOT late last week is they should be done with phase 1, which is the south side, around the 16th of October. And then they'll be switching over to the north side. And what that means for you is that your access should be at full.
It's just the traffic is just backed up down 59.
Yeah.
It's awful. I hope they don't run that through the winter like that, that's all. Thank you.
And because we can't make everyone happy, I have had some people express concerns about the traffic backup on West Bartlett Road west of the intersection, mostly in the rush hour times, but according to them, the afternoon rush hour is from 1:30 to 6:30, which is a pretty long afternoon rush hour. And then, of course, the truck traffic that we have, apparently, we've got the signs that say don't use Naperville Road. So that's causing them concern because now the trucks are using Bartlett Road instead of Stearns. So I was asked to, I was asked to see if we could nudge IDOT along in the construction.
And Chief, one of the things that I noticed at that intersection personally is we might have to spend a little time over there because these semis that are coming and making a north turn going east on West Bartlett Road, they don't care if it's red or green. They want to get through there. They waited 3 or 4 lights, and there was at one point 3 trucks went through on the red, just because they knew if they kept close enough to each other that nobody would be able to go through the intersection. So,
Our
already at accident-prone intersection as it is.
Yeah, I'm gonna be happy when that's finished. Anything else? Any town hall? If anybody would like to address the board at this time, kindly step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, Terry.
Yeah.
Terry Witt, 471 Southwestern Avenue. Kevin, I think I can keep it down to 3 minutes because in the first hour, everyone here said everything I was going to say about the parks and the forest preserves and the trails, except for one thing.
Okay.
So we kind of touched on it a little bit because we are connected within our boundaries. We don't have a lot of big boxes, which is good. We don't have big box restaurants. We got great family restaurants, great hospitality, and we all know about that. But Bartlett is sitting right in one of the largest trail networks in the country. Kind of touched on it, but we don't tell everybody about it. If that was part of our message to everybody out there, come to Bartlett, hey, have a great meal. Our restaurants have to order twice as many hamburgers, twice as many hot dogs, twice as many tacos. I mean, there's thousands of trail travelers out there. We could have over 40,000 trail visits a year just coming into Bartlett. But we got to tell them. One of the best ways to tell them is to post some map boards at all the entrances into Bartlett. You know, out at the state park, there's a bicycle circle that comes. People from Crystal Lake are coming through that circle. They're headed to Wheaton. They're headed to Geneva. We need a board there that says, hey, come east to Bartlett. Down south, Bartlett Avenue, people can ride all the way to Naperville, Lamont. They can ride to Elmhurst, Brookfield Zoo, down to Chicago. All these places we can ride to. Well, those people can ride to Bartlett if we just bring them. Hey, and we got a great metro station. We just heard about the museum. Oh, and by the way, for that party, Christy, maybe get a bicycle map to put in a time capsule at the museum, because the railroad started the first 150, but the bicycle can start the next 150. And in 2173, they open the time capsule and say, wow, look at that map. Look at how many bike maps we had, bike trails we have in 2023.
Yeah.
So that's my message. We are an oasis. Invite the people in.
Okay.
We can take their money.
Thank you, Terry.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else like to address the board at this time? Chris, is anyone online?
No, Mayor, there is not.
Thank you. Moving on to standing committee reports this evening. First standing committee report is Building and Zoning. Chairman Gunstein.
President Wallace, I have nothing to report tonight on this committee.
Thank you, Chairman Gunstein. Community and Economic Development Committee, Chairman Gansey.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have, continuing the conversation on one item, East of Venezuelan Food Restaurant VITA application that includes improvements in the ceiling, counter, plumbing, new and used equipment, fire suppression, signage, and other associated costs. Is there any discussion?
Thank you.
We did. I had some questions and concerns about some of the items that I came across in the packet. But I have met with staff before the meeting. I met with Tony and Paula and Scott and pointed those out, and we're in agreement, and they are planning to pull those out on the back end and true that up for us regarding some painting, warranties, and some permits, and then some clarification on the fire suppression.
So does that change the dollar amount in our motion?
Do you want to address that?
But we do have the stipulation that if the amount decreases, we can decrease the award.
Tony, do you have something to add?
I was going to say much the same, that we would decrease it percentage-wise, recommending a 34%.
We were at 50,228, but this is going to reduce that number, and then the 34% will come off of that.
Right.
Did you get your question answered as far as a business plan for this particular entity?
And we reviewed the plan that it, they met the requirement of submitting the plan. The fact that they are an existing business elsewhere also provided some more information on their business plan as well.
One of the things that I had mentioned when they first came in front of us that has me a little concerned is statistically businesses, when they said they were open for a year and a half or maybe 2 years, statistically businesses, small food, especially restaurants, the first 5 years are the hardest. So one of the things I would have loved to have seen was like a profit and loss on what they're doing now with their business. Some type of a business plan that shows me that, hey, this is going to be a successful investment into a new business in Bartlett. Another thing that I would have liked to have seen is the improvements that were being made. I want to be 100% sure that those improvements aren't being made by the landlord on behalf of the tenant.
We did discuss that. Because then the landlord should fill out its own application
Right.
for those improvements. We discussed maybe firming up some of the definitions in this program, as in what define a new venture. How many years are we going to define that? 3 years, 5 years? And so then we would need because it can't all just be subjective. A lot of it seems to be subjective. And I think everyone would be more comfortable if we had some very clear definitions on these things.
Yeah, I think the entire board probably agrees that we have some massaging to do with the whole BETA program.
Yeah, I would like to request to take a look at it in light of our strategic plan and see maybe about kind of changing it up in light of our strategic plan as well. So it sounds like
we have a
bigger discussion on it moving forward.
Yep.
Of how we envision it,
What's that?
of how we envision it and how it,
Going forward.
yeah, community.
How things
going
have
forward.
changed.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Any other discussion?
I got it.
You got it.
All right, with that motion, I move to approve a BETA grant in the amount of $17,000 to East's Venezuelan Restaurant, subject to all applicable village codes, regulations, and to be reimbursed after proof of all payments is submitted.
I'll second that.
Moved by trustee Gansey, seconded by trustee, what's your name again, Daney? Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Laporte?
Yes.
Swansky?
Yes.
Daney?
Yes.
Gansey?
Yes.
Gunstein?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
A motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Gansey. Finance Committee, Chairman Laporte.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing to report this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Laporte. License and Ordinance Committee, Chairman Hopkins.
Thank you, President Wallace. Item D1 was covered under the consent tonight.
Thank you, Chairman Hopkins. Police and Health Committee, Chairman Swansky.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have nothing to report this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Swansky. Public Works and Golf Committee, Chairman Daney.
Mr. President, Public Works, F1, F2, and F3 were all covered under consent. We have nothing else this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Daney. Any new business for the good of the village?
I'll just tell you that we waited until after you voted on the BETA to let you know that they brought some empanadas for you to try in the.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
All right. All right, we're gonna have to have another break.
Why don't we have a BETA grant for a bar then?
Any updates on Marion Bright? I'm gonna keep pestering about this until we have a date scheduled, and
Oh, yeah.
it's awfully early this year, isn't it?
Oh, it's always the first.
Yeah.
It's the first Friday,
First Friday of the month.
in December.
Santa even get out of North Pole at that time? The 1st of December?
Comes to Bartlett.
on the train, in the train station.
We have a extensive, tree memo that we're gonna be looking at with a few options. That's really the next big decision point. The committee has done a fabulous job of making things merrier and brighter, and it's gonna be a fantastic event. Like you said, Mayor, from a handful of people on a snowy night to flip the switch to thousands of people in the park. It's really fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm excited that staff gets really excited about this, as we do. So, you know,
Well, it's still early in December, we might all be in shorts and polo.
yeah. That's okay, too.
Yeah.
Anything else anybody would like to discuss? Questions or anything else? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by trustee Daney, second by trustee Hopkins. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Swansky?
Yes.
Daney?
Yes.
Gansey?
Yes.
Gunstein?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Laporte?
We are adjourned. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second part, Act 2 of the Village of Bartlett Committee of the Whole meeting for October 3rd, 2023. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to again please call the roll.
Trustee Daney?
Here.
Gansey?
Here.
Gunstein?
Here.
Hopkins?
Here.
Laporte?
Here.
Swansky? Here. President Wallace?
Still here. First thing we have on the committee this evening is Building and Zoning Committee, Chairman Gunstein.
Thank you, President Wallace. First item we have tonight is YLM Logistics. Petitioner is requesting a site plan review for the proposed 20,000 square foot office warehouse facility. The office will consist of 5,000 square feet divided into 2 levels, with the second level being a mezzanine. The remaining 17,500 square feet will be dedicated for warehouse use. The site contains 36 parking spaces for office and warehouse employees as well as visitors, which means zoning ordinance requirements. There are 69 trailer and semi parking spaces. The petitioner is requesting a special use permit to allow outdoor truck, trailer, and semi storage. And with that, I will turn it over to Christy Stone.
Thank you, Chairman Gunstein. This is one of the few remaining lots on the east side of Munger Road. It's very similar to a site plan we approved for Tomart in 2020. The building elevations are primarily gray with some second-story office windows where the mezzanine is located. They are providing evergreen trees along Humbrock Circle to help screen all the truck and trailer parking stalls. Staff is requesting that the board forward this to the Planning and Zoning Commission to hold the public hearing.
Anybody have any questions?
Looks pretty standard to me.
I think it's pretty well laid out, and the landscaping plan looks pretty sufficient from what I can tell.
They exceed our landscaping requirement.
If nobody has any questions, we'll send this on to the Plan Commission.
Instead of bringing it back to the board, can we have it maybe back to the board?
Go straight to board and...
Yeah, we don't need to come back to committee.
Pretty basic.
It'll save them a couple weeks.
Okay. I'm sure they won't object to that.
Yep. All right, Dano.
All right, item number 2, we have a thoroughfare plan, and I'm just going to turn it right over to staff.
3 minutes.
3 minutes? Okay. And no questions. Ignore that. All right. The village adopted a thoroughfare plan in 1988. So we thought we would kind of go through when we had the Hawk Hollow school conversion, the Fair Oaks extension was discussed. So we thought we'd go over some of the other projects that are in that as well. So I'm going to go through some of the projects that have been completed. We completed Struckman and Mayflower as part of Silvercrest. In 1993, IDOT stopped studying the Fox Valley Freeway, which you saw west of 59. In 2005, South Devon Avenue was extended to West Bartlett Road. In 2010, Munger Road was extended to West Bartlett Road. And then in 2023, we vacated part of the Fair Oaks Road extension. So there's a few remaining areas that we have for discussion. The Oak Avenue realignment, the Prospect Avenue extension, the Reading/Regency and Auburn and Jervey connections, the remaining Struckman and Fair Oaks extension rights-of-way, the old Stearns Road right-of-way. So back in the 70s, the Elgin O'Hare was originally planned to go east and west directly north of where Ford Lane is now. IDOT acquired a lot of the land in the 70s as well as some in 91. As part of that, Oak Avenue was projected to extend northward and be an overpass over the Elgin O'Hare. Those plans changed in 1990, and as recently as 2017, IDOT completed a feasibility study and recommended the Oak Avenue realignment still move forward. This is kind of the layout of what that would look like. Just to give you an idea, based on that study, traffic in 2014 on Oak Avenue was about 5,400 cars. They were projecting in 2040 it would increase to only 6,000. So it's not making a huge impact on the amount of traffic. I have that in there for the next slide, where we talk about the Prospect Avenue extension. So originally the plan was to have Prospect Avenue connect as a road to Park Boulevard to create a four-way intersection. Hale Avenue would also be extended northward. In 2003, Christian Tabernacle Church submitted a concept plan to accommodate the proposed right-of-way. Pavia Marting did a study in 2003 and recommended that the Prospect Avenue extension go forward. In 2008, Christian Tabernacle sold the property that's highlighted in yellow to accommodate this future right-of-way. According to Pavia Marting's study, the average daily traffic in 2003 was 550 cars on Prospect. If this road were to go through as proposed on the thoroughfare plan, it would increase to 5,200 cars.
We can just take this off the book.
That's why we're bringing it up, because we did receive a concept plan earlier in the year. If you recall, there were some concerns about the connection, and the committee at that point was thinking possibly just having that as an emergency access.
Good idea.
So I wanted to give you the background on the traffic study that we had prepared so that we can discuss it before that project comes through as a full application.
I agree with Trustee Hopkins. Take it off.
And then the other one I've heard from a few trustees talking about some of these dead ends that the village has. Reading Drive was to connect northward to Regency Drive. Maryville owns that property. As part of their deed for that land, if they allow anything to happen on that other than their child care program, that property reverts back to the state, and Maryville would lose their rights to the property. And then for the connections on Auburn and Jervey, the Forest Preserve District acquired that land in 2003. The map to the right shows a critical wetland that's highlighted in red, and some regulatory wetlands that are in green. The Forest Preserve District has indicated they would not support any roadways through their property. It's possible they would consider in the future doing maybe a pedestrian connection that would go from Auburn north towards Holly Drive, but they would want to make sure that it stays out of any of the wetland areas that they have. But that is something that they would need to plan in their capital budget, just like we do. They go several years out. So if that's something that we'd like to pursue, that's not something that they'd be willing to add to their capital budget at this time.
So would that be similar to like I've seen it in different communities or different actually forest district areas. One of them that kind of comes to mind is in over by Carroll Stream, where they've got like the stilted walk paths.
Boardwalk.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be something I'd definitely be interested in pursuing, like a bike/walk path.
I agree. I think that's one of the most critical connections that we need to get residents from downtown Bartlett directly to the intersection of Stearns and 59, without having to go all the way through town.
I agree. I had called them once asking, and it sounded like even this, like for the Holly, like they have to vote on it, right?
Right. They have a board just like we do, and they have their capital improvement budget just like we do. And so it has to go through their planning process as well. So it's not as simple as just making a phone call.
Or anything we can, especially the straight to Jervey.
So the regulatory wetland does come south. So that's what they were really concerned about, having any sort of east-west connection. They're more leaning towards having a connection that would come north.
There's currently a path there. Yeah. It's been there for 25 years.
It is not Forest Preserve recognized.
I know. But that is the path that's... Footpath that's been used for the reasons we're talking about putting an actual path in. So.
Maybe we can get a hold of Al Murphy and see if he can push that forward. Yeah.
And then again, with the other remaining rights-of-way that the village owns for Struckman would be north and south of the railroad tracks in Silvercrest and Harmony Grove, and the Fair Oaks extension that runs through the enclave. There is also a right-of-way that the village still owns for Old Stearns Road that was never formally vacated. The north 33 feet should go to the townhomes. The south 33 feet should be conveyed to the Forest Preserve District.
Going back to the Struckman, who owns the property that those two right-of-ways are in?
The village owns the right-of-way.
They own the right-of-way? If we vacated those right-of-ways, would those be lots that could be sold for development?
We would have to look to see if it could be, if they would meet our requirements, our lot size requirements.
Okay. It would be something I think would be worth, instead of just having a dead end there for the next 20 years, it would be, you know, I would think it would be wise to look at a development there on both sides.
How much more room is there when you go to the west?
For the west?
Where it says Struckman right-of-way, is there like how much space do we have in that right-of-way?
The right-of-ways,
North.
this right-of-way I know is 60.
No, on the other side of the tracks.
Down here?
No, the big letters that say Struckman right-of-way.
Oh, this?
Yes.
This is for the Forest Preserve property.
That is?
Yeah, the Forest Preserve owns this triangular shaped piece. We have an easement through it, but it doesn't actually align with where the roadways were.
Talking about to the east of the black line?
Yeah.
That small little triangle?
It's either that or it'd be sold to each of the neighboring houses and split in half. Both sides.
Make it easier to plow snow?
And then I just thought I would show a couple subdivisions where we do have rights-of-way for future connections. One is down as part of the, off of Petersdorf. There's Harbeck Way for whenever the farmland to the west develops. And then we have Bay Meadows Drive, currently dead ends at a property. We have been in talk periodically with the property owner who currently has the land up for sale, so there would be potential for a secondary access point for those properties. And then Litchfield Lane dead ends at the properties to the north, the horse farm. We had plans at one point several years ago as a concept plan to re-subdivide that. It was a little longer than 3 minutes. I apologize.
It was perfect.
Can we get those slides?
Yes.
I think you have.
What are next steps?
We're going to have the ones that are all marked up.
Well, the next steps are just this was just informational. So when we get the concept plans or the development plans for some of these projects, you have a background on what the plan showed and why staff is supporting either making the connection or to remove that from the comp plan.
So can I ask you if you could do us a little favor? Sure. So unlike the Struckman, where everyone knew that the railroad was never going to let that go across Struckman, ever. That wasn't going to happen. So really, it wasn't a board decision. Could you put something out to the board of these where you think, like, give us the feasible ones? These are ones that are really actually something that we should consider higher importance than other ones that are probably really unlikely?
Sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. That's all we have to report
Do
today.
you have any other questions? Thank you, Chairman Gunstein. Finance Committee, Chairman Laporte. Let's talk taxes.
Here we go. The proposed property tax levy for 2023 totals $12,874,801 and is $1,090,000 $905, or 9.26% more than the prior year's extended amount. The general corporate levy is 10.37% more than the 2022 extension and is $750,000 more than last year's actual levy amount. The police pension levy is increasing 20.49%, or $456,158 over the prior year extension. The same amount of $319,175 of general fund balance surplus used to keep the 2022 police pension levy unchanged from 2021 is proposed again for the 2023 levy. The remaining increase is due to higher than expected pension costs and low investment returns over the last year. The debt service levy is lower from the prior year estimated extension amount by $48,159, or 1.62%. Overall, the levy increase not supported by added taxable property from the Brewster Creek TIF closing is 4.35%. Homes valued around $400,000 will see a $40 to $45 increase in the village portion of their tax bill. And for further explanation, we'll turn it over to Todd.
Thank you, Chairman LaPorte. I'll go, like was just mentioned, we did go over a lot of this in the budget in March, April when we passed the budget. One thing that does get calculated later is the pension levy, so I will talk about that a little bit more. But first, like was gone over already, there are three basic levies. One is for the general operating fund, one is for our debt service, the other is for our police pension levy. A big factor that goes into it that I don't usually try to calculate is the burden level between the three counties. That's calculated by the state. For the 2023 levy, with the closing of the TIF district, we've got quite a bit more property coming from DuPage than we do Cook going on to the property tax levels. So I think it's going to change the burden levels a little bit. It should reduce the Cook County level, increase DuPage County, and then Kane would stay about the same or go down slightly because it's such a small part. Overall, about $90 million in this equalized assessed value will be coming from the Brewster Creek TIF. So that's going to about 5 million to 10 million from Cook County, 85 million or more from the DuPage County portion. Again, so we start the levy process during the budget. This levy, the 2023 levy, goes to fund the current year that we're in. Even though money is actually received after this fiscal year is closed, it goes to fund this year. The only one that debt service is actually for our debt service payments in 2024, and the pension is for the pension required contribution that started May 1 of 2023. So it's a little confusing on the timing, but it does start with the budget where we say this is how much money we need to fund the budget. So the proposed levy is $7,269,094 for the general, $2,682,060 for the police pension, $2,923,647 for the debt service, for a total of $12,874,000. I know there's a lot of numbers, so I'll try to use rounded numbers going forward from here. But this graph shows, for truth of taxation purposes, compares our actual levy to what was extended last year. So the difference between the actual levy and the extended is the Cook County still adds 3% for the general levy and the police pension levy. So they tack on a 3% loss factor or loss allowance to what we levy. And for debt service, they add 5%. DuPage County quit doing that. They only add to it or adjust to it what was actually refunded the prior year, so it's a minimal amount. You see that later when we get into the rates. So this chart, for truth and taxation purposes, shows an overall increase of $1,090,000, or just about 9%. This chart shows the actual levy to the previous year's levy. That's where the increase in the general is the $750,000. We'll talk about these increases a little bit more in detail. So the total to the actual levy, or increase from the prior year actual levy, $1,255,000, or just under 11%. I've got the list just for your references. You can go back. You can see prior year levies. In regard to the $750,000 increase, this is to capture the extra EAV that is being added from the closing of the Brewster Creek TIF. So currently, that $700,000 is going into the TIF municipal fund, and that's being used by the village for TIF expenses. As that comes onto our general tax rolls, it will if we don't do anything, it will reduce what everybody else pays, or we're adding it to pick up that extra without changing. So the addition to the levy should be offset by the addition of the EAV and not cause property taxes to go up in that way. Again, about $85 million from DuPage, $5 million from Cook. Those are pretty conservative estimates based on the 2023 or 2022 assessed values. This is just a breakdown of our debt service levy. We still have a little. We did refund the 2016 bonds. Those were for the police station. Some of those are still being paid off as 2016 bonds. The rest of it is the 2022A bonds. Those are the police station bonds. 2017 bonds are for the fire station. Originally, they were issued in 2007, refunded in 2017. The $38,000 that's being abated is the portion that the fire district pays for what they have outside of the village boundaries. 2019 bonds. The part that is being abated is for the Devon Avenue excess flow. It comes from the sewer fund. And the 2021 A bonds is all for the water connection. We refinanced the loans that we had with the DuPage Water Commission. So our total debt service levy, just over $2.9 million. That's up just about $20,000, $25,000. That's due to the Brewster Creek TIF closing. We were paying about $29,000 from the TIF towards the debt service, towards the fire station bonds. Moving on to the police pension part of the levy. So this year we are proposing to increase our levy from $2.2 million up to the 2.6 or almost 2.7 million. It does show our annual returns there. These annual returns go up and down quite a bit. For our actuarial calculations, they are smoothed a little bit. They do affect our required contributions. Just to note, though, our investments are meant to be for a long-term range. So we try not to pay attention to the short term, but it does affect our levy a little bit. So the actual required contribution, according to our actuary calculation, is just over $3 million. We are proposing to increase the levy from last year by the $478,000, leaving the $319,000 to be funded from the general fund surplus. Our contribution does go up based on one factor was our low rate of return last year. We usually budget a little over $3.5 million in investment returns, and when our annual return was 0.75, we didn't reach that amount. We assume about 6.75% is what our assumed rate of return is. Some of the increase, $156,000, is due to we're continuing to try to get our assumed rate of return down to 6.5%. This will bring it down to 6.625%. So we're almost there as far as getting our assumed rate of return down. We had 2 service retirements in the last year, hired 6 Tier 2 police officers. So right now, we have 36 out of 62 actives that are in Tier 2. Now, those pension benefits are not as costly as the Tier 1. There is some news about whether those requirements are going to need to be, the benefits increased due to meeting the Social Security standards and things like that. Again, so the overall increase to our levy, 21.7%, that's about a 4.1% increase to the total levy. And adding that to the slight increase to the debt service, that's where we came up to the 4.35% increase to the total levy. And we did a little looking at houses in Cook County and in DuPage County in about the $400,000 market range, which typically has their village portion of the tax bill is between $900 and $1,000. So that's where the $40 to $45 increase comes from. Here's the EAV history. We have finally, we're finally saying that we're going to cross the low, I guess, from, let me adjust my, back in 2009, our EAV peaked at $1,366,000,000. We're going to cross that mark finally after all the housing values went down. Another note is that Cook County just came out with their preliminary rates yesterday. So I estimated, middle of the road 7% for Cook County, even though it was a triennial assessment. It came back at 26% increase. So Cook County went up quite a bit. So we'll see how much it will be adjusted going forward from there. But this is what affects the rates. It doesn't really affect what is paid on the tax bill, but it does affect the rates going forward. So here's our estimated rate based on an EAV of $443 million. Well, the actual EAV for 2022 was about $485 million. So these rates are going to be quite a bit lower. The 22 rate actually ended up being about 95 cents. But you can see the way it's calculated, you got the full levy, you add to it the loss factor. Again, that's 3% in the general and police, 5% debt service. And then this is using an estimated burden of 37.7%. Comes up with the rate. So the total burden for Cook County, just over $5 million. For DuPage County then, the EAV for 2022, and then estimated about a 5% increase, $961 million, with the burden of 61.78%. Again, I added about $20,000 is it for a loss factor. Prior year adjustments, there's really not a lot of refunds in the DuPage County side. So a calculated rate is just about 82 cents, and that's slightly down from the prior year. So overall, estimated EAV of $1,411,000. It's going to be quite a bit more than that with the large Cook County increase. We show the piece of the pie here again. These are the 22 rates. Village of Bartlett, about 10%. The big 63%. That's the school districts, and then all the other districts are listed there. This is the 21 rates. I didn't have the 22 rates yet, but they're similar to DuPage County as far as the 10% portion for the village. The school district is a little bit less than Cook County. So So as far as going forward, a notice will be published in the paper, this Friday. We'll have a public hearing the next meeting. We'll set the estimated levy. The levy needs to be adopted, December 05. It needs to be filed with the counties by the last Tuesday, month of December. So that's it. That's the first look. I think, yeah, if you have any questions or comments.
Yeah, for 2022, so on a $400,000 house, we're indicating it'll go up $40 to $45. So that was 2023. What's 2022? So when the taxpayer looks at their bill, what was it last year? And we're saying it's going to be $40 to $45 this year, right? So what was it last year?
What was the full amount they paid last year?
Yeah.
What was the increase year over year? I think it was like $12 or something.
Yeah, I think it was less. It was under 2% last year.
So we're saying it's going to go, so if they look at their bill last year, 2022, it was a $15 increase. This year, 2023, it's going to be a $45 increase, right? Or it'll show $45 based on that $400,000.
Yeah, yes. What we did last year was we did not increase the pension levy at all. The full $319,000 came out of the general fund.
Well, my point is, the taxpayer is going to look at the bill and they're saying it's going to go from 15, it's going to triple in their eyes, right? Am I $15 to $45 over in 1 year?
Oh, the amount of the increase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I'm just
yeah.
devil's advocate. As a taxpayer opens up their bill, that's what they're going to see. So last year they'll say $15. This year it'll say $45.
For the Bartlett portion.
For the Bartlett portion.
Increase in Cook County is going to trump all that.
No, I get it. Well, groceries, gasoline, all that stuff. I mean, nobody should be surprised, but I just want to know how I'm going to answer people.
How do we change that where we don't have to raise taxes? What are the options?
Typically, we've raised the police levy. That's what we've been, the police pension levy, we've been raising that to cover the pension. We've been leaving the general fund levy flat. And we've been using other sources for the general fund. That's when we removed the utility taxes years ago, but we added the sales tax on the home rule sales tax. So that's been doing good for us. I know we've been adding some businesses, but the amount of new businesses with the sales tax rebates and things like that will not cover that. When we did close the TIF, we added back to the general fund expenses that we were partially charging to the TIF for TIF activities. So that's why we do need to increase the levy to cover those TIF costs that come back to the general fund after the TIF fund is closed.
You know, I've sat on this board for 9.5 years, and I think for the majority of the time we've kept our levy flat, I want to say. Very incremental increases.
Right, for the general levy, we've kept.
The general levy.
Yeah, I can.
And I think when we have raised it, we've always done the exercise of having staff look at things that could be cut. And I don't think any of us like the things that staff recommended being cut, but I think it's one of those things where we're proposing to raise taxes on people, and I think we do need to just take a quick look at some of the things we could cut to not have that impact. Whether we implement them or not, you know, that's another story, but I think it's something we owe our residents to
due diligence.
Look at.
I understand that part, but when we do our budget in the spring, and we talk about the levy, that's the time to cut things, not after. So we talked about at the beginning, we passed the budget along with this is where it's going to be funded from. So this levy goes to fund the budget that was passed, back in April. That's the fiscal year that started May 1. So if we want to say we want to cut, we need to do that when we approve budget.
It's kind of a catch-22 though, Todd, you know that, because we don't know what that number is going to be.
Yeah,
We certainly don't know what the pension number is going to be.
Pension,
That's the
and
biggest
that's
burden
really
that we have, is the police pension. You don't know that it's going to be 20-some% higher.
Right, and the pension number is really kind of the
Yeah.
magic number here.
And sometimes you have to bite the bullet.
You know, and we already anticipated taking money from the general fund reserve to dampen the
Increase in the
impact
levy.
of the police pension fund.
Not an exact science.
Yeah, there is still talks about changing or pushing off the funding date. I know that right now the pensions need to be funded 90%, 2040. And they're talking about that. Now, that's not going to help pay the pension liability, but that would reduce the annual required contribution.
And where are we at? Are we like 78?
Yeah, we're at about 78% funded as far as if you're looking at the market rate and the present value of the liabilities. There's different ways.
That's a moving target though too, because every time you have multiple retirees, that number changes. That number gets, the burden is higher and higher as you get more retirees and more hires.
Right.
And 6 more people, you've got to fund that particular portion.
That percentage goes up and down quite a bit with the investments.
Yeah. And 2022 is a train wreck.
It's not looking really good this year either. So we need to keep funding the pensions.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really negotiable.
And there are some unknowns this year at the Springfield level, looking at enriching the Tier 2. You know, we looked at Tier 2 as a way to give some relief to municipalities and funding those. And the state legislators in Springfield are now looking at rolling some of that back in Tier 2, and, you know, maybe the counterbalance to that is like, we're going to enhance Tier 2, but we're going to extend that 10-year period. It's not really a wash for municipalities, but in Springfield, they have different math than we do up here. And, you know, we don't want to get in a hole in our pension liabilities. Like, you know.
What are other communities doing? What are other communities doing? I'm assuming they have like some same problems. Like, does the municipal
They raise
council?
taxes. Other towns raise taxes.
But like, are they raising it this year? Did they do it last year? Like, where do we like kind of fall in with?
I think every town kind of has their own tolerance level for tax increases or how they're doing things. There's a few towns that have added different taxes. Some towns have increased their sales tax, or they've, you know, a home rule municipality has a different set of menu that they can look at for tax incentives than a non-home rule community. So, you know, a town that is home rule can have more flexibility in changing those percentages than a town that is not home rule. So they have different restrictions. Some are under, you know, different kinds of structure. Some towns don't have property taxes. Some towns rely heavily on their sales taxes. So every town has a different mix. So I think it's more individualized. It's not, well, you know, next door they raised it X.
We have a special meeting once before something was going to expire to take advantage of an opportunity to be able to tax.
That was the penny push tax, and that's in litigation, I believe. So we don't want to start collecting something we might have to pay back.
So if we go to the first page after the executive summary, so the increase let's just say the pension fund is 450, the police pension 456, 158. And the general corporate is 682. That's for the whole village, right? That's for the whole village?
Yes, that's right.
Sorry, it's not split between Cook or DuPage here.
That's the full levy, right.
So do we have money in the general fund this year to offset the pension like we did last year? We've already did that, which is bringing this to 456. That's what that is.
Yeah, we're including to use the 319,000 again this year as we used last year. So again, the problem is that keeps compounding then going forward. So the levy, the required contribution increased would have been 800 and some thousand. We're proposing to increase the levy 500,000 instead of the full 800,000. But then next, it'll keep drawing either from the general fund, or we'll need to increase the levy for that amount plus the new amount coming forward.
Where's the general fund balance at sitting now according to policy?
General fund it's over the policy of about 35,000.
By how much?
It's at about 50% of revenue over the 35% that we're talking about. I think that one thing the policy is not covering as far as capital costs, and we'll be talking about that in the next month or two, are the stormwater sewer improvements that need to be made. We talk about there's no revenue source for those. That's going to have to come out of the general fund. So money in the general fund is going to be needed for capital costs.
You already accounted for that, except for the 316,000. We think we can get by using the 316.
What did you say it was over? The general fund?
Our policy states that we would have between 25 and 35% of our annual operating expenses. We have our annual operating expenses in the general fund are about 30 million right now. That's what our current budget was. So 50%, 15 million or so. We might be closer to 55% as far as so we're 5 to 6 million over, but we have those kind of expenses and stormwater improvements that need to be made in the next 5 years. So that's why we're kind of earmarking that money for that. We've talked about infrastructure needs in the past. We've gone over what's needed for streets, storm sewers. I know that our MFT contribution, we're looking at $1,600,000 a year for MFT contributions, and how that is not going to cover. We've been working on the Rebuild Illinois funds. That helped us, but we're going to need to supplement those general fund funds. So
if our percentage of change is 9.26, what would we need to look at to get that to 5?
5. So what you need to account for is the $750,000 increase. That's not going to increase the property taxes because of the extra EAV from the closing of the TIF coming onto the tax rolls. So the total increase outside of the 750, the additional EAV, is 4.35%. The portion of the increased total levy from the pension fund. So we're looking at a total of 4.35% increase to the levy that's not going to be offset. That's the $40 or so on a house that has been paying $1,000 a year towards the village.
I'm sorry, if we go back to that slide, the first slide again, that shows the very first slide.
Well, I'm on the second slide, and the reason why I'm on the second slide is because the first slide includes the loss factor. It includes the extension. When you're showing the 9% increase.
The actual's 10.8.
So I'm on this slide that shows the actual proposed levy to the actual 22 approved levy. That's
10.8% total.
You mentioned that our police pension fund was 78% funded for the state policy.
2040?
Well, the state, 90% by 2040. So that,
We're at 78 right now.
yeah, that's about, yeah.
Could you email us and let us know how we rank amongst all the communities in Illinois?
Way up there.
Are we in the top 10, top 5, top 50? I just would like to know where we
I
rate.
think the city of Chicago is somewhere in the 20s, right? I think it's somewhere in the 20s.
That's not where you want to be, but yeah, they're in the
No, it's not where you want to be, but, you know, I think we can always go back to the well and collect taxes or levy taxes, and obviously it's a very important fund to make sure it's funded. But if we're in the top 5, you know, I mean, what are we trying to do here, you know? So
20 years to go.
Well, here's the thing about pension fund levy, pension funding. The more money you in there, the more money you have in the fund, the more investment returns there are. So then, right now, we're paying the annual cost plus the catch-up. The closer you are to being funded, the closer you are to only pay the annual cost without having to pay the annual catch-up. Some communities are contributing more, or they're issuing pension bonds to put more money into the fund because that's going to help them in the long run. I know that, you know, we're looking at taxes this year, but the more money you have in there funding it, that's more interest returns that you get, and then you're only contributing your annual costs.
go ahead, Trustee Dunstein.
I just had a question. So you're indicating that we're sitting at about $5 million over in reserves, and there's a sewer project that's going to eat a portion of that up, and that sewer project is not part of the budget?
Stormwater.
Stormwater, I'm sorry,
We have
stormwater.
a funding source.
Stormwater, yeah,
Storm does.
yeah, our wastewater and our water funds, we use rates for that. The water rates, sewer rates, revenue, that pays for our capital improvements. But
don't we account for that in our budget?
we do have it in our 5-year capital plan.
So, I mean, I just don't like seeing the people's money being held for over what the limit is. So, you know, for me, if we brought that down a little bit, would it really hurt future projects?
It's going to get replenished. It'll just get
If it's being replenished.
as people.
I mean, I understand having a safety net, but I think it's a lot. It's a lot of the residents' money being held, and I just think that there's something that we should look
Not
at.
being held, it's being earmarked to fund
earmarked.
the sewer, the storm sewer projects.
But
So it's,
aren't those funds coming back through in the continual budget every year for water and sewer repairs?
water and sewer rates are separate than stormwater sewer. So there's no line on your water bill that goes to stormwater sewer or stormwater funding for capital projects.
But the money that goes into the general fund is constantly being replenished.
Comes into the general, is paid out of the general fund.
And that fund is being replenished through taxes, sales tax, right? Different taxes.
Everything.
Yes?
Okay, the last couple of years, we had a lot of pandemic funding. So the last couple of years were good years. We had strong economy, a lot of sales tax. That's not guaranteed as far as, you're not going to see the type of pandemic funding that we had as far as, $1.5 million from the CARES Act, and then additional money, from the ARPA money. We did, our financials look good from going through, with the pandemic funding, but that's because we don't run a hospital, we didn't, have those kind of costs involved with that. But that's not guaranteed going forward. I'd say that we're not going to have those kind of funds going forward. So it won't, the fund balance is not going to keep replenishing itself.
Review it. There's plenty more time for questions. Has to be done by December 5th. Right?
Yes. Well, actually, we have to, we don't have that much time. We need to post an estimated levy.
Yeah.
And have a public hearing at the next meeting, and we can, if we want, we could still discuss it at the next meeting.
Yeah, we will.
That's what we want to do.
Yep.
Would you want us to propose the same level of increase as last year, the $15, like you were saying, Trustee Laporte?
Yeah, give us a breakdown of what it does to the other funds if we're going to dip into anything else. Absolutely. That'd be helpful.
The other
Live
funds.
on the edge a little bit, Todd.
Then moving into the capital budget review, we're just going to slash and burn through it and just take things out so that, to your point, Trustee Hopkins, we're not putting that in the budget
I didn't say
the
that.
next time.
I mean, I said we should look at everything. I didn't say cut. I'm not up here slashing things. I would like to have a discussion.
Maybe that was an aggressive term.
Yeah,
On the flip side, how for the revenues can you have? What else can?
You talking to me?
Does anybody else have any other comments?
No.
He's just gonna have to pay more for golf.
Thank you, Chairman Laporte. Public Works and Golf Committee, Chairman Daney.
Thank you, Mr. President. We only have one thing on the agenda this evening is DuPage Water Commission, water purchase and sales contract extension. And I'd like Dan to take the lead on this, if you would.
All right, thank you. I'll try to go through this real quick. The DuPage Water Commission customer contract expires in February of next year. So as part of that, the customers put together a steering committee of 8 members. Bartlett was included in that since we were the newest customer, so I sat in on those meetings where we went through the contract, reviewed it with DWC. Once we got it to a point where we were in agreement, DuPage County had their state's attorney review it, and Naperville had their internal legal staff review it as well, with the DuPage Water Commission's attorneys, and we've got it to a point where it's being recommended to approve the agreement. So we're in a process right now where the customers are all going through their boards to get it approved. DuPage Water Commission presented last week, actually, and they're going to be bringing it to, once the members approve it, then they will award it, and that all has to get done before February. So the plan is, over the next couple of months, everyone's going to be bringing this to their boards, so that we can then give it to DuPage Water Commission saying that they've been approved, and then they can approve it from there. There really aren't any changes. The contract was working very well. I would say the majority of the changes are cleanup because the original contract included all the projects associated with establishing the DuPage Water Commission. We had so and then there were subsequent customers that joined, Bartlett being one of them. So a lot of language was just cleanup of that, because now we're in the, basically contract where we're purchasing water from DuPage Water Commission. It'll be a 40-year contract, and if there's any questions, I can answer those.
Has DuPage Water Commission, finalized their negotiations with City of Chicago?
That's actually under negotiations right now. So that contract expires in March of next year. And so this month, the DuPage Water Commission will be discussing at their board, a contract extension with Chicago. They are looking at alternatives, even an alternative source to get away from Chicago. So those things are being talked about. They've got a couple meetings this month where they're going to be presenting the alternatives options to the board, and the customers will be sitting in on those meetings. What they've told us so far is no matter what, if the DuPage Water Commission were to decide to say, thank you, Chicago, we're going to go another route, that's going to take 15 plus years to design, build, and permit.
Another straw in the lake.
That's exactly what they're talking about. So they will be extending the contract with Chicago. It's just a matter of how long is the discussion at this point.
Could we, keep informed on the dates of these meetings that DWC has?
Definitely.
Definitely let our residents know also and post it, because I think it's important, because it could raise our rates. If they went with a different water source, our rates could go up.
They're public meetings, so I think people can attend. I'll definitely make sure to get you the meeting dates. I believe there's one on it's like middle of October, like 16th, 17th, and then one at the end of the month.
So you kind of hit on it a little bit. My question was going to be, can you have an example of what an alternative would be? Would that be going into Indiana and accessing Michigan from there?
They looked at, I think, 3 routes right now. One was through Chicago, one was south of Chicago, and one was north. I will say that the north seems to be the most preferred, because there's other JAWAs, Joint Action Water Agencies, that may be able to join on with that, which would help spread that cost. But it would be putting, like the mayor said, putting a straw out into the lake. You would have to build a treatment facility and then pump it to all the members that are involved. So it's definitely a huge project.
Anyone else? Dan, thank you very much. That's all we have this evening.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
By trustee Daney, seconded by trustee Hopkins. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Daney?
Yes.
Gansey?
Yes.
Bernstein?
Yes.
Hopkins? Hopkins?
Yes.
DeGort?
Yes.
Swansky?
We are adjourned.